All right, thanks for joining us. I want my ceiling to be my son's foundation. Who said that? That's fantastic. I just wanted to let you know face to face that I'm going to be stealing that. That is great. All right, we have Rick Roach, Richard Roach, and Kyle, your last name? Is what? D-Y-E-R. Let's get you you got a microphone there?
Kyle Dyer.
All right, and where do you guys farm?
What do we farm or where do we farm?
Both.
We raise corn, soybeans, and wheat. All Pioneer.
Dude, you're killing me up here.
No, it's we raise corn, soybeans, wheat. Glad to be a part of the Beck's family, and I'm Richard, the 5th generation. These guys are the 6th, and the 7th's around here somewhere. They're somewhere
at the kids zone. Okay, so Rick, you're the dad. Richard, you're the son. And Kyle, you are the son-in-law. Yeah. So how long have you been back at the farm, Kyle?
I've been back to the farm since 2008.
Okay. So you ought to know these guys well by now.
I know them pretty well,
Yeah.
You got to ask him the story on how he started working on the farm.
So Kyle, tell me a story.
So Richard happened to lose a basketball game one night, and
I lost it.
Yeah, he lost it. Anyway, tempers were a little hot, and there's a lot to go in the background there. But anyway, Rick saw me in the basement hanging out with my wife now, and he wasn't very happy. And he came over and talked with me and challenged my work ethic, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to prove him wrong. And worked one summer, and I just fell in love with farming and everybody I was around. And my parents weren't very happy because I went to college to be an athletic trainer, physical therapist, and I was down the farming path pretty hard. So I'm glad they challenged me.
Sounds really romantic there, Kyle.
Yep.
So Rick, you are the patriarch of the farm. So you have a son and a son-in-law. I mean, was this always the goal? Did you want the kids to come back to the farm?
Well, I don't think there's a farmer that doesn't have the aspirations for his children to have the passion for farming that they have. And yes, that was always a dream of mine. And I mean, I couldn't get back to the farm fast enough. And my son Richard, I didn't really know his aspirations, and he went off to school at Kings Point, the Merchant Marine Academy in Kings Point, Long Island. And I thought, well, my son's not going to be coming back to the farm, you know, and you try to not sway them, or you don't want to persuade them. You want them to make their choices. You'll have to ask him about that. But yeah, I mean, and you wanted to have a business that could continue on and for the next generations, the same thing that was afforded to myself.
So, Richard, my dad and I never had that conversation. Hey, are you coming back to the farm? We didn't have it. It sounds weird to say it out loud, but tell me about you and your dad and how that all worked out, that yes, you were going to be coming back to the farm.
Yeah, to be honest, it wasn't until recent years that I knew that he wasn't sure. To me, it was always kind of understood. It was just a matter of what was the pathway going to be. And Dad had always challenged me as a younger man in high school years about the importance of getting experience in other avenues, other forms of business, other industries. And in my mind, that was kind of the route that I was going to work somewhere, completely different industry, getting exposed to different ways of business, different levels of professionalism, some of the things that could be applicable to a growing operation. And but I had always known that my passion was farming, and to be honest, with what I was doing before, there were positives and things that were enjoyable, but it's difficult to be doing something you weren't passionate about when you knew what your passion was. And I was fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to come back.
Rick, I think it's important if you could describe why you never told Richard, hey, I want you to come back, while you didn't want to, just in a farmer's mind. I get it. I think other people get it, but I'd love for you to actually say it out loud.
Well, if you're going to do this business, you best be passionate about it, because it's rough, and it's a gut wrenching, and we all know the different things that we have to work through. It's also the blessing of being a farmer to get to do that, but to try to encourage or demand or expect or put pressures on someone to come do this, you're setting yourself up for some pretty bad things, I think.
Well, and going back to you, Richard, okay, yeah, you've heard your dad say this now. I'm worried about saying, I want you to come back because of, it's going to be a tough life at times. So as the son, I think it's kind of important if you say out loud your aspect of, I didn't understand that he ever had a doubt in his mind.
Well, I think that kind of what the expectation within our family was that whatever we were going to do, we were going to be the best we could be at. And I know Kyle and I are trying to do that within our family. And so it's the standard of what we're doing as much as it is what we are doing. So, our family likes athletics, and I've said to my son, I don't care if you want to be in the marching band and play the flute and don't want to play basketball or football or baseball or whatever, but if you're going to play the flute, you're going to be the best flute player, and you're going to work as hard as you can at it. And I think that's the standard that was set within our family while we were kids. There wasn't an expectation of coming back to the farm or a pressure there. It's just whatever you're going to do, you're going to be good at it. You're going to be the best you can be at it. And I think that's where the standards kind of start. And then the passion for the business, that's something that's nurtured in just growing up, being exposed, being included, being allowed to be a part of it, but the good and the bad. I don't think, one of the things that's become more aware in my mind as we're trying to raise our kids is reflecting on my childhood and my dad letting us fail. Like I have many examples of, he could have said, no, you're doing this, and this is why, and he would have been right, but he allowed us to make our decisions, and that led to failure. But that's where we've learned, that's where we've grown, and that allows us to be more valuable as adults, because if he'd have just said no, I'd have heard, oh, dad's being mean, dad doesn't want me to do this. Instead, he let me learn in my failure, and that sticks with us, and I think that adds value in our adulthood, in hopefully adding value to the business as well.
Well, it says a lot about you, Rick. I mean, Emily and I have talked to enough farms where it just, that the kid and the parent just never talked about coming back, and it just never came to fruition. So I'm glad it has worked out for you guys. And I've left you out, Kyle, because we all know what you were thinking about. Yeah, it's a different story. So what's the plan? You've got son and a son-in-law coming back to the farm. As far as the succession, you just gonna ignore it until you can't walk anymore?
No, we've already put that in motion back. Gosh, honey, when was it? Back in 2018, my father passed, and at that time, we were concerned about the new administration. Well, it was 2020. The new administration was coming in. The question was about the inheritance tax and what was going to happen with all that. Was that going to be cut back, and la-da-da-da-da, all that garbage we go through in life, right? And so at that particular time, my sisters made it so that I could buy their holdings out of my father, and it was a question of what are we going to do now with it. And it was just a pass-through. I mean, what was it, Richard and Kyle? For 5 minutes, I owned my father's land. It was in my name, or however it was. And I can remember that being a rather emotional time. And Richard made the statement. He goes, Dad, if you don't want to do this, you don't need to do it. And I said, well, son, it's not that. I can't believe that I can. And so that at that time was when we transferred the land, is in my, at that point, might as well say it, our 3 children's name.
Well, let me start with you, Richard. Okay, I mean, you hear your dad, obviously, the passion in agriculture, the passion in farming. Now it's on to you and your brother-in-law. Is there a pressure there?
I don't think that I can ever say I've ever felt a pressure other than something that we would put on ourselves for a desire to perform, to do well. Pressure from my dad, no. I was just talking with my wife last night in a different context, but using an example of when Dad first kind of transferred over the marketing to me of our grain. And that's something that Dad's been very good at in his career. And there was a decision that was being made, and that was in 2018. And I had talked with him about what my thought process was and what we were going to do. And he had offered his counsel, and but he had just said, this is your decision to make. And I made the decision that I thought was best with the information that I knew. And, had I done what he said at the time, the results fiscally would have been much more positive than the decision that I made. But there was never a, I told you so, or hang it over the head. It was just, he knew that I did the best I could with the information that I had.
Do you want to say it? I told you so? Was it coming out of your mouth and you held back?
Well, there's no better lesson than that. I mean, but what you have to also understand is he came to me at that sometime later and said, Dad, how did you let me screw this up? Well, how could you allow this to happen? And I said, well, son, you have to understand, in this business, every year you'll sit down, and I use 6 digits. I said, there's a 6-digit decision you make every year that you look back on and you go, well, if I'd have done this, well, if I could have, should have, would have. I said, but what you have to do, let's look at the positive decisions that you've made throughout the course of the year that put us in position to weather this poor decision or poor choice that we made. And that's the lesson you have to learn in this business.
Well, and it's worse learning a lesson that way, isn't it? If you mess up on your own, it's fine, but now you're messing up for the farm. We've all done it, but that's a harder lesson to learn than just anything else.
Yeah, and that's a weight, but I think that the big thing is for us up here is we all know we love each other, we care for each other, we have each other's best interests. No one's maliciously trying to make something harder for the other. No one's going to maliciously lose money, right? And so to what you're talking about with inheritance stuff, that if we have that baseline established, that we care for each other, that we care about the business, we want that to be successful, and no one's selfishly approaching that affords those harder conversations. And it makes those things more fluid because it's based out of a genuine care for each other and for the business. But in those failures, right, if you had somebody that's hanging that over you, that pressure that you initially asked about, that's immense. And that leads to crumble. And what it really leads to is inaction, because a fear will just lock you up. And so you just don't do anything. And that leads to a farm that's just going to erode away over time.
So, Kyle, do you get tired of your brother-in-law screwing up?
He doesn't screw up very often, but
he doesn't know about them all.
I think the one thing that does, what we've done is he has a certain task, I have a certain task, Rick has a certain task, and we don't really overlap those tasks. We talk about a decision that we're going to make, and he's the final say on it. And nobody has harsh feelings towards one another. We have our own roles in the farm, and we're okay with that. And nobody gets their feelings hurt.
Let me ask you this, Kyle, because there's a lot of people we've talked to where, someone marries into the farm, a son-in-law comes back, and there's always that outsider feel. So when they talk about succession, they talk about handing the farm over. Yes, it's your wife's family farm, but do you feel, a hesitancy to put your opinion in there when those talks are happening?
No, I don't feel hesitancy. I naturally am kind of an introvert, so I won't sometimes, but no, I don't. I've never felt like an outsider. Rick,
you seem like a bit of an oddity in agriculture because a farm dad is not supposed to talk about succession or feelings, and we're supposed to point out every mistake everybody else makes, not just your family, but your neighbors as well. Why are you so different?
Well, what we've failed to say here is, in that little thing they played beforehand about going to my father and asking for his opinion, I had such a great mentor. And
Your dad.
my father, and I think, what was I, honey, 31 or 32, and I went to my father one day and I said, Dad, I think I need to buy you out. And my father said, well, son, you can't afford to buy me out. I said, Dad, I can't afford not to buy you out. And it wasn't about finance, it was about our relationship at that particular time. There's a lot of stuff that goes father, son, and da-da-da. Well, my dad allowed me to do that, and learned so much in that period of time about that whole, what we're talking about, transitioning. And I had made a commitment to myself that when that time came, I wanted to be able to do it in such a way that I could still be a part of the operation and be a part of the ongoing. And my father allowed me to take it all over. And he was very supportive, but he didn't work with us every day. My dad was he's type A, I'm type A, and we're probably both type A++. Well, those two don't go together real well, right? And so in all of that, what I realized is part of what we've trying to implement now. I'll use Kyle, for example. He comes back, what's an athletic trainer know about planting corn or soybeans, right? So he starts off planting soybeans for us. I'm thinking, that's what I was doing at the time. He's not going to be as good at it as I was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you have in the back of your mind. That's why you don't give over control. You think you're better. Well, I hate to say it, but I would have Kyle, he plants all of our corn, but I'd have Kyle Dyer plant corn. I'm telling you, you want him planting your corn and soybeans. And I would have bet good money that he wouldn't be very good at it when he started. You understand? I hope people understand what I'm trying to say. But and so then what you realize in that, right, is we're all replaceable, and we're not nearly as good as we think we are, right, John? The older we get, the better we were, right? And so it's just that mentality that you got to watch.
Why are we picking on John?
Rob, a point I want to just dovetail on there, though. What Dad said about Gramps, that's what called my grandpa Gramps, and him, they knew each other, right? And my grandpa was able to let go of his pride, if there was any pride, and say, hey, this is the right decision for the business. Rick needs to buy me out. I need to step aside. I've worked my whole life to build this, but I know the best thing for our business, in order for it to continue, is for me to step aside, right? And then so for Dad, in the stage that he's in, he knows himself and he knows us, and it looks different. Dad's not just gone like was with Gramps, but those are the things as a kid that I'm observing, and my dad was letting me in on that, right? Like, I wanted to work with Gramps. I know of a lot of farms that are standing around here where Grandpa's still working every day, and Dad and the son. I didn't have that, and a part of me longed for that, but by my dad being communicative with me, even as a young man, I knew that's what was needed for the success of the business. That wasn't the easy decision, it was the right decision. And so I think the ability to let go of our pride and to make the right decision, not the easy decision, is the key to helping facilitate all this. And then being honest with your kids too. Like, if Dad just hid that from me, there maybe would have been an element of resentment that I didn't get to work with Gramps in the way that I wanted. Now, Gramps facilitated us working in different facets, and we had fun times and things, but it wasn't like I'm in the auger cart and Gramps is in the combine like you see with a lot of people. It was different, facilitations of working together. But I just think pride and then knowing each other, and I want to dovetail on Kyle, what he said is, it takes a big person to do what he just articulated. He voices his opinion, we hear it, But then for him to say that I have the final decision, there's huge humility in that, right? Enormous humility in that. And then for Dad, the same thing. Worked his whole career, 65, still going, and he's allowing a 36-year-old dingaling to have the final decision, right? And just great humility in that.
Okay, I love what you guys are saying. It's hard for other farms to do what you guys are doing. And I want to ask all three of you this. If there's people out there listening and they are struggling, either they're the kid or the parent, with talking about succession, what advice are you going to give them? We'll start with you, Rick.
Well, I think it's critically important that it's communicated the desires that you have, and also that you start early in the process and not late. And I don't think you want it to be a forced reaction. It has to be, I think it's critically important that you're proactive in this particular area, because it's ever evolving. And I got choked up a little bit ago because I said when we passed the land holdings down to our 3 children, and I can say this now, I got my emotions under control, but on July 9th, our youngest daughter had an aneurysm of her aorta, and she passed. And so now all of a sudden you think, well, we thought we had this kind of figured out. We had this lined out. And so you go from 3 to 2, and there's a lot. There's a lot there. And what we've committed as a family is that it would make us stronger, draw us closer, that we would use this to bring honor and glory to our Lord Jesus Christ. And truly, this company here is based on faith. And the number one thing that a farm family has to have is that. Then you build off of that and move forward from there. And you have to identify who's your leader. We sat around a table and we identified that Richard is the leader of this family right now as far as the farm aspect goes. Doesn't take away from any of our other responsibilities. But when we make a decision, he's going to make the final call.
We listened to a speaker probably 8 years ago, and it still hits home. And the question is, do you want to be a farm first family or a family first farm? And you need to be a farm first family if you want the farm to succeed. That meaning, if you have a family member that wants to come back, but they're not making right decisions, maybe not just at the farm, but off the farm, that's dragging you down, dragging the farm down, you can't do that. You've got to think about the farm first and what gets the farm to the next level. You can't let it drag your farm down just because you want Johnny to come work for your farm.
Yeah, that's great. Richard?
I think something that we can relate to as farmers is equipment plans and marketing plans. I think the transition plan has to look really similar to those things. And so I'll use an analogy with equipment. We at one point we were a 2 combine operation, and now we're a 1 combine operation. And that changed. That was a continual analysis. And so I think that the transition, succession planning, whatever you want to call it, needs to be a continual analysis. But just like your equipment plan, not many farms need 2 combines. So if Kyle and I are both trying to be a combine, harvest isn't going to be nearly as efficient as if we had 1 combine and 1 cart instead of 2 combines and no carts, right? Fiscally, that doesn't look good. Capital investment and all that, the efficiencies of it. And so, I think we need to be analyzing it that way, to make the analogy to equipment. But it also has to be continuous. And the first thing I think that has to be established with the collective is, what do we want out of this? So what's our goal? What are we desiring? Is it to just take away as much as we can to live a lavish lifestyle and, and then eventually liquidate it for our retirement plan? Or are we all willing to make the sacrifices, the commitment to continue to grow this? Are we okay where we at? What's our goal? What do we want out of this collectively? And we got to get that established. And then it's a continual analysis, no different than your equipment plan.
What you guys have accomplished as far as communication in a farm family is a rarity. So I hope you appreciate each other on how open and honest all of you are about what it's going to take to pass the farm on to the next generation. Let's be honest, a lot of the times it is the patriarch in the farm that has a hard time letting go and has a very hard time communicating. Rick, I give you all the props in the world. You've done an incredible. Obviously, if you're still farming, you are a good farmer. But I think today it's showing that you are a great dad. So I want to thank you guys for coming up here and being a great example for the rest of us in agriculture. Now I got to go home and be nicer to my son. Thanks a lot. Does anybody have any questions?
Rob, I do want to say one thing, like with an asterisk. I don't want to sit up here and act like we got it all figured out. And
we know.
I also want to say that it could all be gone tomorrow, right? No different than anybody else. So we're just sharing thoughts, ideas, conversations. I don't want to act like, don't put us on any sort of pedestal like we've got it all figured out. We're as broken as the next. We need as much work as everybody else does.
We're pathetic losers, right?
Yep.
You have honesty and you have humility over there as a son and son-in-law, and the appreciation of what you are handing over to them, Rick. And that goes such a long ways in agriculture. So yeah, I know you all are being humble in that, but one thing you're very not good at is taking a compliment.
We've identified that as a weakness within our business and in our family, is none of us are good at complimenting each other. And we
I know.
Made a
That's what I just
effort
said, man.
of doing that. You figured that out pretty quick.
Okay, we got time for a question if anybody has a question. All right, well, I want to thank you guys for coming up here. Really appreciate it. You're a great example. No surprise why Beck's looked at you guys and said that is somebody that we should highlight. So let's give these guys a big round of applause.